You think your spending says what you want. It doesn't. It says who you are. This is the money identity. 1. The paying past self. You're at a restaurant and you order the expensive one. Not because you're hungry for it specifically, but because there was a time when you would have looked at the price and put the menu down, and some part of you is still sitting at that old table, watching. You buy things sometimes and you can't quite explain why they feel important. A jacket you don't need. Shoes that are a little too nice for your actual life. And it's not about showing off. No one even sees most of it. It's more like you're buying it for someone who isn't here anymore. A younger version of you who went without, who counted coins, who said, "I'm fine," a lot. That's called the paying past self. You're not spending money on yourself. You're handing it backward to someone who can't receive it. And the strange part is, what that person actually needed wasn't the jacket. It was just someone to tell them it was going to be okay. 2. The Success Orphan. You're at your parents' house for dinner. Your mom is talking about the price of eggs going up again. You nod. You don't mention that you just spent more on lunch yesterday than her entire grocery list. Not because you're hiding it, but because saying it out loud would make the distance real. There's this thing that happens when you earn more than the people who raised you. The conversations start to feel like they're in two slightly different languages. You still love them the same, you still laugh at the same jokes. But there's a gap now, not emotional, economic, and you both pretend it isn't there. They told you to go further than they did, so you did. They just forgot to mention that further also means away. That's the Success Orphan, the quiet grief of arriving somewhere your family can't follow. Nobody makes a card for it. 3. The Breadwinner Mask. It's 3 a.m. You're awake doing math on your phone's calculator. Not the banking app, the calculator, because the banking app would make it too real. Rent, insurance. That thing your brother asked for last week. The other thing you said yes to because saying no felt like pulling out a load-bearing wall. At some point, being the person who handles the money stopped being a thing you do and became a thing you are. People don't ask if you're okay with it. They just assume you are because you always have been. You're not a person to them anymore. You're infrastructure. And the problem is, infrastructure doesn't get to say, "I'm tired." The moment you do, everyone standing on top of you starts to shake. That's the Breadwinner Mask. The identity crisis of being everyone's financial foundation, where the only feeling you're allowed to have about money is, "I've got it handled." 4. The Upgrade Imposter. You moved into a nicer apartment, the kind with a lobby and someone who says good morning. And the first few weeks, every time you walked through that lobby, there was this small, stupid feeling that you were visiting. You order coffee without checking the price now? You take cabs sometimes instead of the bus. Small things. Things that should just feel like progress. But there's this low hum in the background that says, these people belong here. You're just passing through. The Upgrade Imposter is the feeling of living a life your self-image hasn't accepted yet. Your bank account moved up, but inside, you're still standing in the old apartment, wondering when someone's going to knock on the door and ask you to leave. 5. The Secret Downgrade. Your income dropped 6 months ago, maybe longer. A job ended, a business slowed down, something shifted. But your Instagram didn't change, your restaurant choices didn't change, your "I'll get this round" didn't change. You're spending money you don't really have anymore to maintain a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore. And it's not vanity. It's fear, because letting people see that things changed feels like a public demotion. Like everyone will look at you slightly differently and you'll have to watch it happen in real time. That's the Secret Downgrade. The identity crisis of performing a financial life that's no longer true. You're not being reckless. You're just terrified of being seen starting over. 6. The Lifestyle Alibi. Someone at a party asks what you do for work, and you answer, but you edit it. You round the number down. You make it sound less than it is. You say it's okay when it's more than okay. Because at some point you learned that having money changes the way people stand next to you. They stop asking you for advice and start asking you for things. They stop seeing you and start seeing a resource. So you hide it. You drive a car that's reasonable. You say it was on sale when it wasn't. You perform modesty like a second job. The Lifestyle Alibi. The identity crisis of being financially comfortable in a world that punishes you for admitting it. You're not being humble, you're in hiding. 7. Frugal Guilt. You're standing in a store holding two versions of the same thing. One costs $12, the other costs $30. The $30 one is better. You can afford the $30 one. You're going to buy the $12 one, not because it makes financial sense, but because somewhere deep inside your parents' voice is still running. Why would you pay more when this one works fine? And that voice has been right so many times and it feels dangerous to ignore it, even now, even when the math has completely changed. Frugal guilt is the crisis of having money but still feeling like spending it is a character flaw. You're not being careful. You're obeying a rule that expired years ago. And you can't find the off switch. 8. The earner versus the heir. Two people are sitting next to each other, same account balance, same age. One worked 3 jobs to get there, the other got a check from their family. On paper, they're in the same place, but the one who earned it feels something quiet that looks a lot like superiority, and the one who received it feels something quiet that looks a lot like shame. Neither of them chose how the money arrived, but both of them are being judged by it, mostly by themselves. The earner versus the heir. The identity crisis that comes not from how much you have, but from how you got it, where the source of your money becomes a verdict on your character, and no amount in the account settles the case. 9. The chronic comparer. Your friend just bought a house, which is great. You're happy for them, you said congrats and meant it, and then you drove home to your rental and something was different. The apartment looked smaller. The furniture looked cheaper. Nothing actually changed, but everything felt like it did. You know comparison is pointless. You've read the quotes. You've told other people not to do it, but your brain does it anyway, automatically, involuntarily, like a reflex you can't train out. Every time someone your age hits a milestone, your life recalibrates against theirs, and you didn't ask it to. The chronic comparer. It's not envy. It's an identity that doesn't know how to feel okay without a scoreboard. You're not trying to win. You just don't know where you stand unless someone else is standing next to you. 10. The guilt giver. Your friend mentions they're a little short this month. Before you even think about it, you've already said I'll cover it. And it's not generosity, not really. It's relief. Because as long as you're giving money away, no one can accuse you of having too much of it. You pick up the check, you Venmo people back and tell them to keep it. You buy rounds, pay for cabs, leave tips that are almost performative, and it feels good for about 10 seconds. Then you realize you're not being kind, you're being preemptive. You're apologizing for a gap no one asked you to close. That's the guilt giver. The identity crisis of having more and not knowing how to hold it without it feeling like a verdict. You don't give because they need it. You give because keeping it makes you feel like you've done something wrong. 11. The money mirror. Someone at work buys a new car. Your first thought isn't congratulations. It's, why would they spend that much? You catch yourself doing math on their salary, their rent, their choices, running the numbers on someone else's life as if you were their accountant. And it's not envy. It's not even judgment. Not really. It's recognition. Because the thing that bothers you about how someone else spends money is almost always the thing you're afraid of doing yourself. The recklessness you won't allow, the freedom you won't give yourself permission to have. The money mirror. You think you're looking at them, but you're looking at you, at the version of yourself you've decided isn't allowed to exist. Every opinion you have about someone else's wallet is just a confession about your own. Here's the thing none of these have in common with a budget spreadsheet. They're not about money. They're about who you think you are because of money. You perform stability because you think that's your job. You hide your income because you think it'll change how people see you. You buy things for a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore. These aren't financial problems, they're identity problems wearing financial clothes. And the first step isn't a savings plan or a new app. It's just noticing which one of these made you stop scrolling.